Imagine having to take care of a girl who just traveled through time, 1,200 years from the past, straight into the 21st century. That's exactly what happens to our main character, Su Qing. One moment, he's living an ordinary life, and the next, he's responsible for a girl from the Tang dynasty. His biggest challenge? Teaching her how to live in the modern world. Of course, that includes explaining why sneaking around at night like a ninja isn't normal, and why she can't just draw her sword every time she feels like it. Turning this Tang dynasty warrior into a proper 21st century lady, and managing to tame her. Yeah, that's going to be a wild ride. The story begins in a busy city on a rainy night. Heavy rain pours over the streets, and among the sea of umbrellas, Su Qing stands out, completely drenched with no umbrella in sight. He dashes toward his dorm building, climbing the stairs quickly. As he makes his way up, he suddenly hears strange whispers. He brushes it off at first, but the moment he looks up, his eyes widen in shock. A woman stands before him, staring into his soul with an intense gaze. Startled, he fumbles and drops his room key. The woman also steps back, as if keeping her distance from a potential threat. Su Qing assumes she's just a cosplayer and continues up the stairs. But as he takes a closer look at her outfit, he realizes how incredibly detailed and authentic it appears. Even so, he shakes off the thought and keeps walking, convinced she's just really committed to her role. Just as he reaches his room, the woman suddenly calls out to him. He pauses, turns around, and casually tells her that this is where he lives. She looks uneasy and steps back cautiously. Seeing her reaction, he starts wondering, does he really look that suspicious? Does she think he's some kind of creep? Embarrassed, he just shrugs and heads inside. After stepping into his room, he peeks outside one last time before shutting the door. The girl is still standing there. Ignoring it, he takes off his soaked clothes, grabs a hot shower, and then cracks open a cold can of cola. He also grabs a bag of cat food, calling for his cat, Melon. Right on cue, the little fur ball rushes over with sparkly eyes, ready to dig in. Meanwhile, Su Qing enjoys his drink, savoring the fizzy madness. After a while, he notices that the rain isn't letting up. Feeling a little concerned, he checks through the peephole. To his surprise, the girl is gone. Curious, he carefully opens the door, thinking she must have left. But the second the door swings open, she's standing right there. A bit awkwardly, he offers her an umbrella or help getting home. But instead of answering, she just asks, "Where are we?" Su Qing blinks. That's an odd question. He tells her they're on Beiwang Road, his neighborhood. The girl goes silent for a moment, as if processing the information. Then, she asks who he is. Another simple question, yet Su Qing has no idea how to respond. He just shrugs and says he's a regular guy. Trying again, he hands her the umbrella, but she stares at it like it's some alien artifact. Finally, she introduces herself. She's from the Yen clan, and she has no idea how she got here. Su Qing wonders his head. Is she just really deep into this cosplay act? He sighs, exhausted, and walks inside while he tries to figure things out. He invites her inside. As he dials his friend Guard Joe for help, the girl's attention locks onto the TV. An ad starts playing, and without hesitation, she slashes or rather stabs the screen with her sword. Her face turns pale, as if she's just witnessed dark sorcery. Su Qing stands frozen, speechless. Through the phone, Guard Joe hears the commotion and asks what's going on. But before Su Qing can respond, the girl glares at him with bloodshot eyes, demanding answers. Zhou, assuming Su Qing is busy, simply hangs up. Su Qing, still stunned, finally asks where exactly she came from. The girl, meanwhile, is more concerned about the people trapped inside the magic box and the strange device he was speaking into. She eyes everything with suspicion, from the TV to his phone. Su Qing then notices her old-fashioned straw sandals and wonders, if she's really from the past, how is she supposed to pay for the expensive TV she just destroyed? Trying to calm her down, he slowly raises his hands, assuring her he means no harm. He then suggests she put the sword away. After hesitating for a moment, she retrieves her weapon from the TV. Our boy calmly asked for her name and where she was from. She finally introduced herself properly. Her name was Jianghe, a disciple of the Yen clan. Su Qing chuckles, complimenting the girl on her cool-sounding name. Then, jokingly, he asks if her prestigious Yen clan is rich enough to compensate him for his broken TV. However, instead of laughing along, the girl furrows her brows in confusion. She asks how he doesn't know about the great Yen clan, Sounding almost offended, Su Qing simply admits he's never heard of them. Her silence is telling. She seems genuinely shocked that someone could be so ignorant of her supposedly famous family. Noticing her tense expression, Su Qing reassures her that he means no harm and tells her she's free to ask him anything. Hesitantly, the girl admits that all she really wants is to find her way back to the Yan clan. Su Qing, still clueless about where this Yan clan might be, tells her they're in Jiangqing City and asks if she's familiar with it, but she just stays silent, making him scratch his head in frustration. He really doesn't want to entertain the absurd idea that she's actually from ancient times, so he tries a different approach. He asks her who her emperor is. Lady Jiang looks at him as if he just asked the dumbest question in the world. She insists that her emperor is someone everyone should know. Su Qing stares blankly at her, completely lost. Seeing his confusion, she asks if this is the 16th year of Kaiyuan. That question stops him in his tracks. He quickly pulls out his phone and starts searching for answers. His eyes widen in shock. Turns out, the 16th year of Kaiyuan was during the reign of Emperor Xuanzong, the 7th ruler of the Tang dynasty, and the one with the longest reign in its history. To test if she's really from that era, Su Qing casually mentions famous historical figures like Li Longji, Li Bai and Li Tai Bai. The moment she hears those names, her eyes light up with joy. She eagerly asks where she can find them. Su Qing, suddenly realizing how deep this situation is, gives an awkward smirk and jokingly tells her she might find them in an arena mobile game. Just then, the sound of knocking interrupts their conversation. A delivery man has arrived with his food. Before Su Qing can react, the girl instantly grabs her sword, ready to confront the supposed intruder. Alarmed, he rushes to stop her, frantically explaining that it's just a food delivery, not an enemy attack. Lady Jiang relaxes slightly but still seems suspicious. She then asks if the man is a servant. Su Qing sighs and explains that he's just someone who delivers food for a living. As he takes the bag, Lady Jiang watches the entire transaction with wide-eyed curiosity, seemingly amazed by this strange modern process. Su Qing, noticing her interest, asks if she's hungry and wants to eat together. However, she stiffens and quickly refuses. Standing near the door, she suddenly asks him why everyone she's seen in this place has short hair. With a serious expression, she wonders if they're all exiles. Su Qing preparing to eat. He reassures her that short hair is just a normal style, not a sign of exile. But then a terrifying thought hits him. What if, before meeting him, she had already run into people and ended someone? He nervously asks if she's harmed anyone since arriving. Lady Jiang, seemingly confused by his reaction, calmly tells him that she was just hiding in the dark the whole time. Hearing that, Su Qing lets out a relieved sigh and finally digs into his burger. But Lady Jiang isn't done with the hair topic yet. As Su Qing enjoys his meal, she suddenly leans in close, staring at him intensely. With a mouthful of food, he hurriedly explains again that short hair is just a common style here, nothing more. However, her attention soon shifts to his burger. She eyes the juicy, flavorful meal, and for a moment she looks tempted. But then she snaps herself out of it, and stubbornly declines again. Seeing her hesitate, Su Qing offers her a soda instead, hyping it up as the sweetest drink she's ever had. But instead of being intrigued, the girl gets offended. She accuses him of looking down on her, thinking he's trying to trick her. Caught off guard, Su Qing hurriedly explains that he was just being nice and offering her something to try. What starts as a simple misunderstanding quickly turns into a full-on argument, with them bickering like an old married couple. In the middle of their squabble, Su Qing accidentally knocks over his can of cola. The dark, fizzy liquid spills onto the floor, bubbling and fizzing. Lady Jiang's eyes widened in horror. She takes a step back, looking at him like he just tried to poison her. Su Qing panics, trying to assure her that it's not poison, adding that it's just a carbonated drink, but we doubt this ancient babe will understand. But the next moment, she's already on top of him, a murderous gaze in her eyes, while our boy pleads that it's all a misunderstanding. But that was just his imagination. In reality, she just gives him a suspicious glare. He quickly takes a big gulp of soda to prove it's harmless. Lady Jiang finally calms down, though she still seems wary of the strange black drink. Su Qing lets out a breath of relief and tells her she really needs to stop drawing her sword every time something confuses her. His poor cat, Melon, is already traumatized. Now that things have somewhat settled, Su Qing starts thinking about what to do with her. He considers three options. 1. Trick her into going outside and letting her freeze or starve, but that would definitely get him in trouble if she ended up on the news. 2. Call the police. But what if she panicked and went on a sword-wielding rampage? Yeah, not a great idea. 3. Keep an eye on her and try to help her adjust to modern life. It's risky, but he might learn some cool things from her ancient knowledge. The only downside, she might chop him in half if she gets too startled again. In the end, he sighs and decides to take her in, for now. With that settled, he once again offers her the burger. She's clearly tempted, but she stubbornly turns her head away. Instead, she demands to know exactly what this thing is that he's eating. Deciding to prove it's safe, Qing dramatically takes another bite, chewing with exaggerated enjoyment. Lady Jiang, now curious, tells him to keep eating. As she watches him closely, Qing realizes that she's probably starving. But this burger might be too modern for her stomach to handle, so he decides to make a rice bowl instead. Truthfully, he's just making excuses to eat the burger himself. Lady Jiang, noticing him happily devouring the whole thing, starts glaring at him in frustration. It seems her stubbornness is no match for the hunger creeping in. Qing gestures for the girl to sit down, but instead of sitting right away, she carefully presses her hand against the seat to check if it's safe before slowly lowering herself. Let's be real, she can't trust this strange guy completely. Sure, he offered her his umbrella, but his room is filled with weird objects, and he eats strange food. She decides to stay alert. She asks about this place again, and Qing reminds her that they are in Jiangqing City. This time, she asks if he knows how she can get back home. The moment she reaches for her sword again, Qing panics and quickly tells her to put it down before he answers. Once the sword is out of sight, he takes a deep breath and tells her something she might not want to hear. She might not be able to go back home because they are really far from her time. Hearing this, the girl's eyes widen, and she immediately asks, how far? Qing hesitates but finally says, over 1,200 years. She curiously asked what he meant by 1,200 year. Qing sighs and explains that it has been that long since her time. Famous people like Li Bai, Yang Guifei, and Lu Shan are all part of history now, dead and gone for over 1,000 years. Lady Jiang is completely shocked. She refuses to believe him and calls him a liar. But Qing calmly tells her to look around. Nothing in this world is the same as what she knew. This world has its own rules now. It might be fun if she gets used to it, but it can also be dangerous. She's still not convinced, and suddenly raises her sword to his face. Qing doesn't even flinch. He simply reminds her that waving swords around is against the law. If she wants to survive here, she'd better learn the rules quickly. She lowers her sword and asks, why are you helping me? Qing shrugs and says it's just like how he rescued his fat cat, Melon, from the harsh outside world. He just felt like he had to help. Bad choice of words. Lady Jiang immediately glares at him, thinking he just compared her to a cat. After thinking for a moment, she realizes our boy's not such a bad guy. He let her in, offered her food, and hasn't done anything suspicious. So, she asks again why he's helping her. Qing admits that meeting an ancient girl like her isn't something that happens every day, and he's just curious. He adds that if their situations were reversed, she'd be curious too. The girl quickly shuts that down. If someone as weird as you showed up in my era, the chief would have chopped you down right away. Qing sighs. Well, lucky for him, they live in a time of peace and love. He tells her that as long as she stays here, she must follow the law, not harm anyone, and avoid breaking other people's things. Then, he gives her a choice. She can either accept his help or wander outside alone. Before turning away, he reminds her not to hurt civilians, or she'll get arrested. Lady Jiang stays silent, unsure of what to do. She doesn't even know where to go. Qing finally says, if you decide to stay, I'll order you some food, but you have to give up your sword. I don't want to get arrested either. With no other option, she reluctantly throws her sword onto the floor. Now that she's staying, Qing starts thinking about what food to order for her. He considers mooncakes for a moment but decides that rice and buns might be easier for her to handle. Then, he tells her to take a shower while they wait for the food. She looks confused. Where am I supposed to bath? Qing leads her to the bathroom. The moment she steps inside, her eyes widen in amazement. She stares at the room in wonder. Qing chuckles and tells her not to be too surprised. There are many more things in this world that she hasn't seen yet. He shows her the shower, and she looks at it like a curious puppy. She cautiously tries it out, watching the water flow. Seeing her reaction, Qing can't help but take out his phone and snap a picture. He then introduces her to shampoo, soap, and even the toilet. While she showers, Su Qing waits outside, rummaging through his things to find something she can wear. But when he tries to knock on the door, he accidentally pushes it open. Turns out, she doesn't even know how to lock it. He quickly explains, stating that he doesn't have any female clothes but promises to get some for her. Next, he quickly steps back and teaches her how to lock the door. The next thing he knows, he's being kicked out. Meanwhile, inside, Lady Zhang is enjoying her first modern shower. She even tastes the shampoo bubbles, only to immediately spit them out. While waiting, Su Qing picks up her sword and examines it. The blade is incredibly well crafted. He wonders if it's truly an ancient weapon and decides to have an expert check it out later. When the girl finally steps out of the bathroom, she's wearing a new outfit. She finds Su Qing busy writing something and asks what he's doing. He doesn't answer immediately, but after a moment, he hands her the paper. Lady Zhang stares at it. It's a list of modern items she'll need to get used to for daily life. Frowns and complains about her current clothes. Su Qing looks at her and casually says she looked pretty. Before she can misunderstand, he quickly clarifies he's not flirting, it's just a normal compliment. Still, the girl glares at him. Stop saying things like that. Su Qing sighs and then notices her straw slippers. He tells her to put them away and promises to get her new ones tomorrow. As he admires her cuteness, there's a sudden knock at the door. She instantly tenses up, ready to fight. Su Qing reassures her that it's just the food delivery guy again. Watching her reaction, Su Qing can't help but compare her to a wild cat, always on edge and ready to attack. He takes the food out of the plastic bag and hands it to her. That's when the girl remembers something her vice captain once said: if someone is helping you for free, they must have ulterior motives. She stares at Su Qing suspiciously. Hearing this, Su Qing clutches his chest in mock pain. Lady Zhang smiles knowingly and finally says she thinks he's actually a good person. After finishing her meal, Su Qing decides to have a serious talk with her. He tells her that she's no longer in ancient times and needs to adjust her beliefs. If she tries to survive using only her sword and ends up killing him, she won't last a week before running out of food. He advises her to stop relying on violence and focus on something else, like using the TV for entertainment. He also tells her that the smartphone can be really useful. Basically, he's trying to reassure her that she's completely safe here and that no one will harm her. Hearing this, the girl nods in understanding, and our hero lets out a sigh of relief. But when it comes to the outside world, things are more complicated. He explains that while this place is peaceful, it could still be dangerous for her. Curious, Lady Zhang asks why. He explains that she might accidentally get into trouble. For example, if she walked into a royal palace with her sword drawn, they would probably throw her in jail. It works the same way in this world too. Not only that, but he also tells her about identity cards. He warns her that if the police ask for her ID and she doesn't have one, she could be in serious trouble. That's why the first thing Su Qing wants to do is make her an ID card. Without it, she'll stand out too much since she doesn't belong in this world. After hearing this, Lady Zhang asks if that makes her some kind of refugee. Su Qing tells her that it's actually worse because the consequences of getting caught are really serious. This freaks her out, but Su Qing quickly tries to calm her down. He promises to help her because, after all, meeting someone from 1,200 years ago isn't exactly an everyday thing. Still, Lady Zhang hesitates. She's not sure if she can trust him and just wants to go home. But our boy tells her that helping her in her current situation won't be easy, and their best chance is for her to cooperate. After thinking for a while, the Lady Zhang reluctantly agrees and asks what she should do first. Su Qing wastes no time and tells her straight up. First off, never pull out that sword again. As things settle down, the girl suddenly looks around and asks Su Qing where his wife is because she wants someone to gossip with. But the poor guy, as much as he hates to admit it, says he's actually unmarried. She is surprised, and an awkward silence fills the room. Su Qing quickly explains that it's normal to not be married at his age. Then, he tells her to make herself comfortable in the spare room he has for her. She quietly nods and follows him. The room has a lot of stuff in it, but Su Qing quickly tidies up, making enough space for one person to sleep comfortably. It's clear Lady Zhang isn't thrilled about staying here, especially with a weirdo like him. However, Su Qing grabs some spare blankets, neatly arranges them on her bed, and urges her to rest. He understands she must be feeling confused. He hopes that when they wake up tomorrow, this will all feel like a dream. Before leaving the room, he introduces himself as Su Qing, wishes her good night, and steps out. Lady Zhang first places her sword aside and then sits on her cozy bed. At midnight, Su Qing finds himself still awake, feeling restless. He thinks about his crazy day. First, he got rejected at job interviews. Then, it started raining when he was heading home. And to top it all off, he met a girl who keeps drawing her sword at every little thing. But then he sighs and tells himself to forget about it for now. There's a lot to deal with tomorrow. The next morning, when he finally opens his eyes, he grabs his phone and sees that it's already 10 in the morning. He jolts awake, suddenly remembering the nut job lady. He quickly looks around, and when he sees her sitting there, he finally realizes this wasn't a dream after all. He collects himself and greets her, "Good morning." But she immediately corrects him, saying it's almost noon. Feeling a little embarrassed, he asks if she's hungry. She nods slightly and then starts searching in her chest pocket. After a moment, she hurries back to her room and returns with 2 silver coins, handing them to him so he can buy food. Su Qing is surprised to see real silver coins. He knows they aren't worth much these days, but if she has gold, he could exchange it for cash and help her get an ID card. The girl then pulls out another stone, but Su Qing quickly tells her to keep it. She still can't go outside yet. Looking at her, he tries to estimate her height and size. Then, he promises to buy her some clothes later, along with food. After freshening up, he heads to the shopping center to buy suitable clothes for her. He looks at several options before settling on a dress and tells the store assistant he'll take it. Then, he spots a section with bras but gets too embarrassed to go in. After an hour of shopping, he finally finishes. As he looks at the stuff he bought, he feels awkward holding women's cosmetics. On his way back, he stops by a bookstore, grabs a few books, and then walks through the busy city streets toward his apartment. When he reaches the entrance, the security guard stops him and casually asks about his shopping trip. Su Qing awkwardly tries to hide all the feminine stuff he's carrying. The guard also brings up the phone call from yesterday. Su Qing quickly makes up an excuse, saying he dialed the wrong number by accident. Before he leaves, the guard warns him to be careful since there have been a lot of thefts in the area lately. Su Qing nods and assures him he'll be careful. When he finally gets back to his apartment, he finds the lady standing there with her sword almost drawn, ready to attack any intruder. Su Qing sighs and reassures her that she's safe. Then, he hands her the food box and tells her he also brought some essentials for her. Suddenly, something clicks in his mind. He looks at her with curiosity, and she asks what he's thinking about. Feeling a little awkward, he wonders out loud if she should be thanking him, maybe even seeing him as a young hero or at least a decent guy. The woman, not really understanding where he's coming from, thanks him anyway. It seems like it'll take her some time to figure out how this weird guy thinks. They start eating, and to his surprise, she devours her food like a wild animal. He had expected women from her time to be more elegant, but seeing her enjoy the meal makes him happy. After eating, he lays out the clothes he bought for her, new dresses and shoes. As he keeps searching through the bags, she spots the bra he got. The guy panics like his soul is about to leave his body and quickly tells her to keep it down. Embarrassed, he promises to send her a video on how to use it so she can cover up her headlights. Flustered, he dumps all the items in front of her and tells her to figure it out herself. Aside from clothes, he also got some books to help her understand this world and its culture better. He even plans to teach her how to use a computer so she can learn on her own. Seeing that she looks tired, he suggests she get plenty of rest before they decide what to do next. But then, she suddenly asks about his status in this world. This makes him rethink things for a moment before admitting he's just a graduate student still searching for a job. It's kind of funny. He's unemployed, yet he somehow managed to spend a lot on fancy clothes and cosmetics. Even the woman starts wondering if he's some rich young master. He quickly shuts that down, telling her he comes from a poor background. She then asks if he's a landlord or something. But before they can get too deep into that, she starts reading the books. While flipping through the pages, she comes across old pictures from her time, and tears well up in her eyes. She starts thinking about how she can return home. The boy reminds her that he has no idea how to send her back, but he asks how she ended up here in the first place. She explains that she was chasing a small thief in heavy rain, got lost in the forest, and wandered around until she saw these tall buildings. It's clear he has no clue how to get her home, but instead of dwelling on that, he changes the subject. He tells her she needs to survive in this world first before worrying about going back. Then, out of nowhere, he asks about her military rank and martial arts skills. The truth is, he's been curious about her fighting abilities from the start. Lady Jang gives him an answer he likes. Her Yen clan is considered the most powerful one. Excited, he asks how high she can jump without getting hurt. She confidently points to the 4th floor of a building and says she can jump from there without a scratch. His eyes almost pop out of his skull. Getting even more hyped, he eagerly asks if she knows any legendary martial arts moves. He starts spouting off names he's probably picked up from video games, but it's all nonsense to her. He even asks if she knows kung fu and begs her to teach him, but she shuts him down, telling him he's too old to start learning. Even with determination, he wouldn't get very far. Chu Xing calms down a bit and asks if martial arts are super strict, like some kind of sacred skill. Lady Jiang shakes her head and explains that it's not about being a master, just learning basic moves and practicing little by little every day. She then gets into position and shows him the first simple martial arts stance, explaining how to focus on balance and posture. He gets excited and asks if he can learn how to fight with stakes, literally begging for it. She reminds him that it would take 3 years to get decent with stakes. The guy does some quick math and realizes he could just join the army in that time, so he gives up on that idea. Instead, he asks her to teach him sword techniques. Once again, she brings him back to reality, saying he's also too slow to master sword fighting because his eyes can't keep up with his hands. Finally, he accepts his fate and throws his dream of becoming a warrior into the trash. He simply tells her to go try on the clothes. While she's in the bathroom, he wastes no time. He grabs her sword and starts swinging it around like he's the second coming of a legendary warrior. But reality hits him fast. The sword is way too heavy for his weak arms. When she finally steps out, he freezes. She looks absolutely stunning in her new outfit. The clothes fit perfectly, and she even moves around a bit to check if anything feels tight. That's when he suddenly realizes he forgot to buy her a hair tie. He tells her to tie her hair back with a band for now. Once she does, she looks even more breathtaking, like perfect wife material. Overcome with emotion, he starts tearing up, feeling guilty for ever underestimating her intelligence just because she's from the past. Deciding to treat her properly, he promises to take her for a walk at night and buy her a proper hair tie. Later, as night falls, Lady Jiang peeks outside her room and sees him sitting at his desk. She steps out and asks what he's doing. He starts explaining computers to her, how you can trash talk people in online game lobbies and how the internet is a dangerous place. Shi Chung asks Lady Jiang if she's having fun reading books. She admits that most of it goes over her head, but she's slowly learning. He tells her to take it easy, there's no rush. He even jokes that if he were in her place, he'd be completely hopeless. Lady Jiang looks at him warmly, her cheeks turning bright red. While Shi Chung is chilling at his desk, she sneaks up behind him again and asks if he doesn't have work to do. He shrugs, saying he's already working hard to make money in this world. But when she pictures someone making money, she definitely doesn't imagine a guy just staring at a giant screen. Shi Chung explains that he's trying to make quick cash online. Since she probably wouldn't understand all the text on the screen, he suggests she start with the basics. Then, he gets an idea. He asks how strong her chief's martial arts skills are. She replies that they're extremely strong. Curious, Shi Chung plays a video on his computer and asks if the fighters on the screen look powerful enough. Lady Jiang's eyes light up as she watches the intense fight scenes. He looks at her, excited, and asks for her opinion. With a timid voice, she admits that she has never seen moves like that before. Just imagining such strong people makes her nervous enough to pray. Shi Chung then pulls up another video where a guy smashes through an entire wall with just his palm. Lady Jiang is absolutely terrified, shaking as she watches. Meanwhile, Shi Chung excitedly asks what she thinks. With a pale face and a trembling voice, she asks if everyone in this world has that kind of insane power. He quickly corrects her, reassuring her that it's all fake. None of it is real. But instead of calming down, Lady Jiang gets even angrier and demands to know if he's telling the truth. Shi Chung firmly confirms that the kung fu she just saw is completely made up. He explains that people in this world create things from their imagination. The martial arts in the video are exaggerated versions of what people think martial arts should be. Slowly, Lady Jiang starts to understand. He reassures her that with time, she'll learn more about art, movies, and entertainment. Finally, Shi Chung asks his original question. Does her chief's martial arts compare to what she's just seen? Reluctantly, she admits that it doesn't. Then, he asks about flying techniques. She confirms they exist, but most martial artists specialize in just one skill. She also points out how unrealistic the movie stunts are since physical strength has limits. Shi Chung thinks for a moment, then pulls up another video and asks if she can do that move. She considers it, then suddenly stands up and starts swinging her hands super fast, moving like a blur. Shi-chung is completely amazed, cheering her on. He excitedly tells her she's got it. Lady Jiang tells him that if he ever wants to learn, she'll teach him. Then, with those words, she heads out, leaving Shi-chung doing a little happy dance, probably dreaming about becoming a warrior someday. As Lady Jiang walks to her room, she sees a fat cat in her way but ignores it, and simply shuts the door in its face. Once inside, she sighs, feeling uneasy. She realizes that in this world, no one does anything without a reason, and the only reason Shi-chung is helping her must be to learn martial arts. This new world is truly strange and scary to her. None of it makes sense. She glances at the high ceiling, grabs her sword, and starts practicing. The noise from her room makes Shi-chung curious. He wonders if she's not going to rest. Feeling tired himself, he collapses onto his bed. The thought of having a woman right next to his room makes him strangely happy, and with that thought, he drifts off to sleep. Suddenly, loud voices wake him up. He looks outside and sees that the sun is setting. Checking his phone, he realizes he slept the entire day. He quickly gets up and decides to take Lady Jiang out to see the real world. As she puts on her shoes, he gives her a set of rules, what she should and shouldn't do in public. He warns her not to do anything without his permission. After explaining everything, he asks if she understands. She meekly nods. Before they leave, he takes a photo of her, but in the picture, instead of looking pretty, she looks like a shady criminal about to commit a crime. He asks her to smile, but her forced grin is so creepy that he nearly faints. Giving up on the photo, he decides they should just go. But before stepping outside, he tells her to leave her sword behind. He doesn't want any trouble. Lady Jiang immediately refuses, but Shi-chung reassures her that the people outside are as weak as he is, so she doesn't need to worry. Reluctantly, she gives up her sword. While she stands there, he quickly takes another picture. This time, it turns out great. Smiling, he says, "Let's go." As soon as they step out of the apartment building, Lady Heng starts looking around anxiously. Our hero reassures her, explaining that this is a neighborhood where families live. He points out the main entrance and the road outside, as well as the stores on both sides where people buy food, clothes, and other essentials. Lady Jiang suddenly tenses up when she sees a guy on a scooter, probably thinking it's some kind of magical beast. Meanwhile, as they continue walking, they pass by some people. A plump woman immediately recognizes Lady Jiang for some reason. The girl quickly hides behind the boy, but the woman insists she's seen her before. Just then, a security guard joins in and teasingly asks if the boy has finally found himself a girlfriend. He laughs it off, saying she's just a friend. But the plump lady isn't backing down. She suddenly exclaims that Lady Jiang is the sword-wielding woman from yesterday. The guard and the woman begin discussing the sword in detail, while the lady vividly describes everything she saw. Our hero quickly interrupts, loudly claiming that it was just cosplay, where people dress up as fictional or historical characters. Luckily, the plump woman believes his explanation. Seizing the opportunity, he grabs Jiang's hand and swiftly walks away. As they leave, the old guard watches them and reminisces about his youth. Once they're out of sight, Lady Jiang pulls her hand away, looking annoyed. Our boy asks if that woman really saw her yesterday, but she remains silent. Now, he's certain that she must have run into that lady on the stairs. Despite the awkwardness, they continue their journey. Lady Jiang is shocked to see cars speeding past. Our boy explains how modern cars evolved from horse-drawn carriages into these fast and powerful machines. Since she doesn't understand how they work, she assumes there must be a horse trapped inside each one, providing the horsepower to make it run. He then introduces her to the concept of cameras and explains how the movies they watched were filmed with these devices. Pointing at a nearby CCTV camera, he tells her that if he were to misbehave with her here, people from far away would see it and report them. So, as long as she behaves, she has nothing to worry about. Lady Jiang picks up a few pebbles from the ground, eyeing the cameras suspiciously. Our boy quickly warns her not to even think about knocking them out. She stops immediately, and he tells her to just put the stones away. Next, he explains traffic lights, pointing out that red means stop and green means go. As they cross the road, Jiang is captivated by the bright street lights and the busy grocery stores. The high-speed cars also fascinate her. While walking past the shop, the boy notices a hair ribbon and considers getting it for her. But when he imagines her with cute furry accessories on her head, he realizes it might not suit her. Still, he continues looking at all the sparkly, colorful items in the store. Lady Jang, noticing his interest, perks up. When he asks if she likes any of the ribbons, she immediately says yes. She takes the ribbon, stretching it vigorously as if testing its durability. But then, she figures out how to wear it properly and puts it on her head. The result? She looks incredibly cute and beautiful. Even our hero can't help but admire her for a moment. As the sun sets and the city lights up, the duo heads into a restaurant. Our boy orders 2 plates of fried rice cakes with extra spices and a side of sliced cucumber. As they search for a seat, he tells Lady Jang that this is the place where all their food comes from. He's been eating here since he was a kid because they make the best meals. Jang, however, is completely mesmerized by the restaurant's glowing lights, so lost in the moment that she doesn't even notice when the waiter arrives with their food. Our boy casually starts eating and hands her a pair of chopsticks. She looks nervous, clearly unfamiliar with them. As he sips his lemon juice, he realizes that leaving her alone in this world might not be a great idea. She needs more guidance than he initially thought, but he's confident he can teach her everything step by step. After they finish eating and pay the bill, they leave the restaurant, both feeling full and satisfied. Especially our hero. Back at the apartment, he asks if she's starting to feel more comfortable. She doesn't respond, just sits quietly on the couch. Trying to cheer her up, he reminds her that living in this world isn't so bad, especially with all the delicious food and junk snacks to enjoy. He tells her that once she gets an ID card, she'll be able to experience even more. But despite his reassurances, she still doesn't seem thrilled about staying. Quietly, she says she wants to go home. Once again, he reminds her that she can't go back. It's already been 1,200 years. There's no home to return to. Reluctantly, she starts accepting the harsh reality. She then asks how they're going to solve the identity problem. Our boy admits he's no government official, but there's always a way. He reassures her that he'll find a solution. Hearing this, Lady Jang gets flustered and feels genuinely grateful for his kindness. This time, she thanked him properly, calling him a young warrior. With a brotherly grin, our boy responds in the same playful energy, emphasizing that identity is crucial in this world. Without it, navigating life here would be nearly impossible. Our boy asks Lady Jang where the list he gave her yesterday is. She points to the trash bin. Disappointed, he tells her to take it out right away. Once she retrieves the paper, Lady Jang asks what they'll do if the ID card issue isn't solved. Our hero explains that without an ID, she'll basically be a criminal. She won't be able to get a job, buy a house, or even use public transport. He stresses that an ID card is like the holy grail in this world. Hearing this, the girl suddenly gets an idea. She asks if making money and finding a place to stay would make the ID less important. Our boy shakes his head and explains that even with money, there are still many things she can't do without an ID, like opening a bank account, getting a phone, making online accounts, or even shopping online. The list goes on. He then opens his laptop and searches for an unregistered resident certificate. At the same time, he suggests that she go directly to the authorities for help with her ID card. He reassures her that, at worst, they might just take her into custody, but he's sure they will treat her well. Hearing this, Lady Jang immediately reaches for her sword. She glares at him and asks if he's planning to turn her in. Our boy quickly tells her to forget it, and just focus on learning about modern society first. He suggests she start with history, and once she has a basic understanding of the world, she can decide what to do next. Lady Jang falls silent, looking anxious and sad. She then hesitantly asks if it bothers him that she's staying here. Our protagonist reassures her that she can stay as long as she wants, but she must promise not to fight or kill anyone with her sword. He assures her that everything will be fine. Just then, his cat comes over, reminding him that he almost forgot to feed her in all the chaos. He plays with the cat for a bit before telling Lady Jang that if she has nothing else to do, she should study. Lady Jang lowers her head and agrees. Since he finds nothing useful on the internet, the boy checks his phone and decides to call his best friend, Qin Hao, who recently became a police officer. He isn't sure if Qin Hao has completed his internship yet, but he plans to ask. As he types a message, he wonders if he should mention that he met a girl from 1,200 years ago, but he quickly decides against it. Instead, he sets up a meeting without revealing anything unusual. Feeling good, he decides to take a shower. After a nice, refreshing bath, he suddenly realizes something. Our waifu hasn't showered yet. He considers bringing it up but decides to leave it alone. Then, another thought hits him. He's sharing his space with a girl. If she had caught him walking around half-dressed, he'd be in big trouble. Thankfully, no one sees him, and he quickly hurries into his room. A little later, Lady Jang cautiously steps out of her room, hurries to the bathroom with a change of clothes, and shuts the door behind her. She's about to take a much-needed bath, just like she used to in ancient times. Since it's the weekend, Su Qing grabs a digital writing pad and starts teaching her how to write. She's already good at reading traditional Chinese characters and pronouncing them correctly, so now she practices writing a few words. Suddenly, his cat, Melon, jumps up and distracts them. The cat looks hungry, so the boy decides to feed her while Lady Jang continues practicing. Watching him pour out the cat food, Lady Jang gets curious and asks what it is. Su Qing explains that it's special food made just for cats. Her mind immediately imagines a strange image: cat food growing from trees in little hanging pouches. Just then, there's a knock at the door. Su Qing rushes over. It's their food delivery. He hands the meal to Lady Jang and tells her that this is her dinner since he's going out to meet his friend and ask about her ID card. She happily starts eating. While she eats, Su Qing promises to teach her how to use a phone and computer so they can stay in touch. Meanwhile, Melon meows at her, asking for food too. Su Qing picks up his cat and reminds her that she has her own special food. Curious, Lady Jang hesitantly asks if she can share some of her food with the cat. Su Qing shakes his head and explains that human food isn't healthy for cats. Lady Jang is shocked. If this food isn't good for animals, how can it be safe for humans? She wonders. Suddenly, her burger doesn't seem as appetizing anymore. After dinner, Su Qing teaches her how to use Discord so she can message him. He makes it clear that he won't be inside the computer, but instead, the messages will travel through transmission waves to reach him. As he leaves his dormitory, he scratches his head, wondering if everything will be okay. Eventually, he reaches his destination after a short bus ride. Stepping off, he looks around and spots Qin Hao sitting in the distance, waving at him. When they finally meet, they greet each other. Qin Hao pours Su Qing a glass of beer, mentioning that it's the first time he's serving him a drink. They sit down, and Su Qing asks how he can drink as a police officer. Qin Hao laughs and explains that he's off duty and dressed casually. Right now, he's just a regular guy. Su Qing carefully places his order, making sure to pick all the delicious options. They clink their glasses together and toast. Then, he asks how Qin Hao's job is going and what it's like to be an outstanding officer. Qin Hao takes a sip of his drink and bluntly replies that the job is terrible. All that talk about heroes saving the day is just nonsense. He often finds himself caught up in small arguments between couples and spends most of his time settling disputes between old ladies in the neighborhood. He rarely encounters actual criminals. Instead, his days are filled with minor issues and everyday nonsense. But despite all this, our hero, Su Qing, points out the positive side. Most people are living and working happily, which is a good thing. Even though Qin Hao complains about his job now, he always dreamed of becoming a police officer when he was a kid. However, he stopped growing after reaching 1.6 meters, and the minimum height requirement was 1.7 meters. He was devastated and cried a lot in our hero's arms. Luckily, when the height requirement was changed to a high jump test instead, he trained hard every day and eventually achieved his dream. Now, after dealing with nothing but minor disputes, Qin Hao is so exhausted that he jokes he would even fight a woman with a sword if it meant doing something more exciting. Our hero immediately tells him not to joke about such things. Suddenly, Su Qing changes the topic and casually asks what happens if a homeless person with no memory wants to get an ID and find a job, but has no proof of citizenship. The officer bluntly responds that getting an ID isn't easy, and someone like that would probably be considered suspicious. With his police instincts kicking in, he asks for the name and address of the person the boy is talking about. Su Qing hesitates and quickly makes up a story, saying it's his mother's brother's son's friend who's in that situation. The officer cuts him off, telling him to stop making things up. He explains that without proof of identity, like a blood test or something similar, it's impossible to get an ID card. Su Qing keeps pushing, asking what happens if the person seems lost, like a homeless guy with no clear identity. The officer replies that if someone looks suspicious, they need to be investigated. Seeing his friend's suspicious gaze, he quickly tells him to stop looking at him like he's hiding a fugitive. He insists he's not trying to cover up anything. His friend reassures him that he trusts him. He suggests gathering basic information about the person and checking a public records database or DNA registry to verify their identity. But suddenly, Qin Hao gets irritated, tells Su Qing to drop the subject. Our boy jokes that he only brought it up because he needed something to talk about. Otherwise, they wouldn't have met up at all. Then, he playfully holds out his hands, jokingly asking to be handcuffed because he wants to experience what it feels like to be interrogated. Later, after their conversation, our hero brings up the ID card topic again, but the officer's answer remains the same. He explains that if getting a new ID were easy, criminals would be committing crimes every day and then simply getting new identities to start fresh. They continue their back and forth discussion, drinking a lot of beer, until the officer passes out drunk. Su Qing tries to wake him up, reminding him that he still has work to do, settling disputes between old ladies. But the officer just groans that he wants more beer. Seeing this, Su Qing tells the waiter not to bring any more drinks. Our boy pays the bill while his drunk friend still demands more beer. Then, he notices a 50% discount on meals over 100 yuan. So he decides to buy a bunch of fish for Lady Jiang. After saying goodbye to his hiccuping friend, he grabs his takeout and heads home, feeling a little disappointed that he didn't get any useful leads. But he's not too worried about it. When he gets home, he finds the girl fast asleep. He pauses for a moment, admiring how beautiful she looks. His heart and mind seem to short-circuit as he stares at her, unsure of the strange feelings stirring inside him. Suddenly, Lady Jiang wakes up, startled to see him back. He shows her the food he brought, and she quietly says thanks. But he's not satisfied with just a simple thank you. Playfully, he insists she say it properly and clearly. Blushing, she responds, "Thank you, young warrior." Our boy dramatically acts like it was no big deal, saying it was just a small effort on his part. As he unpacks the food, our waifu asks if he drank a lot. He denies it and hands her a yogurt drink, telling her to lick the top before drinking. Then, he rubs his tongue over the yogurt lid, showing her how it's done. She hesitates but follows his example, surprisingly enjoying the sweet taste. He tells her to eat up before the food gets cold, then heads to the bathroom to take a bath. While on his way, he finds himself smiling, feeling an unexpected warmth from the simple joy of coming home to someone waiting for him. After his bath, he comes back outside, and Lady Jiang immediately notices him. He asks if she checked her clothes. At first, she looks confused, but then she suddenly remembers the bra he bought for her. Just thinking about it makes her face turn red. She had even tried looking up YouTube tutorials on how to wear it, but it didn't go well. Later, she goes to the bathroom to change. She feels nervous about trying on the elegant dress since she's used to plain, simple outfits that match her quiet personality. She wonders what kind of prickly princess she'll look like in such a fancy dress. She lays out the bra and dress on the bed, then takes a bath and dries her hair with a blow dryer. Deep down, she feels incredibly grateful for the kind young man who has been helping her adjust to everything, but she knows she can't rely on him forever. At some point, she'll need to stand on her own. The next morning, sunlight streams through the window as our girl steps out of her room, rubbing her tired, sleep-deprived eyes. It looks like our hero woke up early today. Lady Jiang sees him and asks if he has worked so early in the morning. He replies that he's just watching the news. She immediately looks gloomy and asks if he's a government official. Su Qing reassures her that he's not, reminding her that if he were, she would already have the ID card she desperately wants. He then asks if she's hungry and offers to buy breakfast, inviting her to come along. She declines and heads to the bathroom, so he decides to go alone, telling her she can watch video online for the meantime. As he strolls outside, humming a tune, the old guard calls him over. Reluctantly, he approaches and notices two more people standing there. One of the women asks if he's heard any strange noises recently. The way she looks at him makes it clear she suspects him of being the source. Our boy has no idea what she's talking about, and tells them he slept soundly last night. He wonders if there was a theft, but the old man suggests something scarier. The place might be haunted. His dog was so terrified the other night that it didn't even bark. Su Qing asks if the old guard noticed anything else. The old man takes a puff of his cigarette, exhales, and admits he didn't see anything himself, but he caught something on video. They all gather in the surveillance room, where the old man plays the footage. In the video, they see something moving so fast it appears as just a blur. Everyone is visibly shaken by this mysterious figure, and the reason our hero is also feeling terrified. He's pretty sure it's Lady Jiang. He face-bombs, completely baffled by what she's doing, and decides to go back to the apartment to ask her directly. Well, now we know why Lady Jiang was so tired this morning. She was probably out exploring the world by herself at night, trying to learn new things. Our boy asks the old man if something similar happened the night before. The guard says no, adding that nothing unusual happened last night. He awkwardly laughs and entertains the idea that maybe there really is a ghost. The bald guy and the chubby lady get curious, wondering why a ghost would be wandering around at night, especially in their area. The old man decides to keep an eye out, just in case there's some thief lurking around. Finally, Qing gets back home, bursts through the door, and immediately yells at Lady Jiang, demanding to know why she snuck out in the middle of the night. He stares at her with a mix of disappointment and concern. Looking guilty, she timidly asks how he knew it was her. This just makes him even more frustrated. He facepalms again, reminding her about the CCTV cameras everywhere that caught her on tape. She looks a bit scared and worried, so she quickly explains that she was wearing a mask. The boy sighs in relief. At least her face wasn't exposed. He tells her that from now on, if she wants to go out, she has to take him along. No more solo trips while she's staying here. He emphasizes how dangerous her situation is and warns her that she can't just wander around freely. Lady Jiang hesitantly asks if she caused trouble for him. He reassures her that, luckily, no one recognized her. Everyone just thought the place was haunted. She blinks in confusion, having no idea what haunted means. Seeing her clueless face, Qing gets agitated again. He quickly pulls out his phone and tries to find a movie about someone from ancient times getting into trouble in the future because of their wild behavior. He wants to make her understand just how risky her actions could be. Our girl looks timid and promises to stop causing trouble if it bothers him. Qing tells her to calm down and suggests ordering takeout later. He asks what she'd like: hamburgers, chicken rolls, or anything else. She responds with a sweet smile and thanks him for ordering such healthy food for her. The boy laughs and teases her, saying that if she wants something even healthier, she could try the cat food. After their playful banter, the boy gathers the laundry and puts the clothes into the washing machine. He also takes the chance to teach her how it works. Seeing this, Lady Jiang suddenly rushes to her room, grabs her clothes, and hurries back to add them to the washing machine. He notices something tucked inside her clothes. Curious, he pulls it out and holds it up, leaving our girl completely embarrassed. She quickly snatches it back from his hand and rushes to her room. Qing is surprised when he realizes it's a foot binding cloth. This doesn't make sense. How was she moving around so easily if her feet were tied up? He remembers how her feet seemed perfectly fine when he last saw her in shoes. Why would she need to wrap them now? To clear his doubts, he searches online to see if martial arts enthusiasts have some kind of foot binding practice. But judging by his disappointed face, the search results don't match what he expected. He turns to her and casually asks if he can take a look at her feet. She pouts stubbornly and shakes her head, clearly uncomfortable. He asks why, but she just stays silent. And then, the realization hits him like a truck. Those bindings weren't for her feet, they were for her chest. Now it makes sense why she ignored the undergarments he bought earlier. His soul nearly jumps out of his body as he realizes his foolish mistake. He glances at her, only to see her glaring at him with a drawn sword and blazing eyes, looking ready to chop off his head. He prepares for his doom, but surprisingly, she takes a deep breath, regains her composure, and turns away, leaving him utterly terrified. Since he's already in trouble, he tries to lighten the mood. He starts a poem about Lady Jiang, praising her natural beauty and how she looks good without makeup. He even throws in a song about a man who married an ugly woman and had 5 kids with her, joking that only a true Sigma male could do such a thing. He dramatically declares that he, too, wants to be like that. Unfortunately, instead of laughing, she just yells at him again. So, he gets back to the main issue. He tells her to watch some tutorials on how to wear modern undergarments, and promises to be back in 5 minutes, hopefully, with fewer jokes this time. Exactly 5 minutes later, he returns to check on her. But instead of being done, she looks completely spooked. With a trembling voice, she asks if this is how everyone lives here. She admits the undergarments feel comfortable, but also make her feel like a shameless woman. He tries to reassure her that there's nothing wrong with feeling comfortable, but she insists it's indecent. He challenges her thinking, asking what's so shameful about it. She goes silent for a moment, deep in thought. He then launches into a playful rant about how she's stuck in the past while modern women wear whatever they want. He even jokes that if men can wear half underwear, then so can women. But she's having none of it, immediately rejecting what she calls immoral thinking. Realizing he won't win this argument, he switches topics to calm her down. He introduces her to computers, explaining that besides studying and working, they're also great for gaming. He warns her about toxic players in games like Apex Legends and instead introduces her to a game suspiciously similar to Super Mario. As soon as she sees it, she gets completely hooked on the colorful world of jumping plumbers. While she's busy trying to beat a speedrun record, he quietly sneaks away, thinking it's best to keep her occupied indoors for now. Later, when he returns home, he interrupts her game to help her defeat the final boss. After their gaming session, he's exhausted and decides to take a nap, leaving her to continue playing on his laptop. As he lies down, he reflects on how lucky he was not to get that job on a rainy day. If he had, managing a 1,200-year-old ancient girl would have made him quit anyway. As the evening sun casts a golden glow across the room, he returns to find Lady Jane. He suggests they eat out, and tells her to dress nicely this time. No more looking like a slob. He even suggests she try a different hairstyle. She checks her options and eventually comes out in a new dress, blushing as she adjusts to the modern style. It's a bit too modern for her standards though. He blushes too, momentarily stunned by how good she looks. But then, reality hits him. This outfit will definitely attract attention. He quickly urges her to change back into something less eye-catching. This, of course, makes her absolutely furious. As they step outside, the old security guard jokingly asks if he's taking his girlfriend shopping again. He hurriedly clarifies that they're just friends. When he asks about the rod, the old man laughs and tells them he's holding on to a ghost-warding talisman until his mahogany arrives. When asked if he looks like the god from the New Year's festivities, Qing just gives a thumbs up and hurries along, noting that it's getting late. Meanwhile, Lady Jane seems lost in thought. Once they're alone, she can't hold back her curiosity any longer. She asks what girlfriend means. He explains that it just means a female friend. She frowns, confused. Then why did you say I'm not your girlfriend earlier? He awkwardly tells her to be patient, and promises he'll explain later. He's pretty sure that if Lady Jane finds out the real meaning of girlfriend, she might just pack her bags and run away. As they continue walking, he suggests she watch videos about her kingdom's history, but she refuses, saying the past is too painful to revisit. While they stroll, Lady Jane notices how different this world is. No curfews, no street vendors calling out for business, and no muddy potholes. Everything looks so peaceful, so surreal, almost like a dream. Their walk leads them to a tea stall, where Qing orders bubble milk tea and some snacks. He urges her to try it. She observes it curiously but hesitates to take a sip. Looking around, she suddenly asks if people make money like this here. Then, with a determined look, she asks if she can learn to do this kind of work. Qing chuckles and gently bursts her bubble. You can learn the skills, but you can't earn money without an ID card. Hearing this, she sips her tea with a slightly disappointed look. He reassures her, saying they'll eventually sort out the ID issue, so she shouldn't worry too much. For now, just enjoy the tea, he says with a smile. She takes another sip, and he asks, does it taste good? It turns out that Lady Jane doesn't really like the drink. She mentions that the taste isn't quite to her liking and that the pearls are hard to chew. Our boy immediately agrees, saying he feels the same way and doesn't understand why people enjoy drinking this piss-like stuff. Lady Jane shoots him a cold stare, clearly not happy about his blunt opinion. Realizing his mistake, he quickly tries to fix it, explaining that he thought girls like sweet things, which is why he ordered it for her. Meanwhile, his own drink is a bit sour. He then offers her a sip, saying she might like it better. She hesitates for a moment before taking a small sip through the straw. As the delicious flavor hits her tongue, her face lights up with joy. Seeing this, the boy exchanges drinks with her, happily giving up his own drink so she can enjoy it instead. As they continue their outing, Lady Jane starts to feel like something is off, but rather than dwell on it, she simply focuses on enjoying her drink. After finishing their meal, our boy shamelessly lets out a burp, showing just how full he is. He then suggests taking a quick tour before heading home. They stroll through the lively city at night, taking in the sights. Next, he stops at a bus station and tells her he wants to take her somewhere nice. Since it's her first time riding a bus, he reassures her not to panic and just follow his lead. He puts in a coin and steps onto the bus, guiding her to a window seat so she can enjoy the view. As the bus moves through the city, Lady Jane is amazed by everything outside. Our boy is a little surprised that she isn't overreacting, considering this is her first time on a bus. She then explains that she has ridden horse-drawn carriages many times before. When they reach the Long Bridge station, they get off the bus. Our boy excitedly tells her that in her era, this place might have been empty, but now it's the heart of the city's nightlife. As she looks around, she can't believe what she's seeing. He encourages her to learn about history if she finds it hard to believe. While standing by the river, he pulls out his phone and snaps a picture of her. She happens to be looking in his direction at that moment, making it a perfect shot. He then promises to take her on a plane once her identity card issue is sorted out. The idea of flying is completely new to her, but he reassures her that, for now, she can stay in his small room and learn more about the modern world. Curious, she asks what comes after understanding the world. The boy pauses for a moment before answering. He tells her that once she truly understands, she'll gain real freedom, knowing what's right and wrong for herself and fully enjoying this new world. Just then, he checks his phone and announces that it's time. Right on cue, fireworks explode in the sky, filling it with bright colors. Lady Jiang watches in awe, wondering if her family would be amazed by such a sight. Su Qing smiles and tells her to enjoy this moment on their behalf as well. The next day, the boy comes across some rather unexpected news. Lady Jiang has been spotted doing ninja-like moves outside, near the lampposts. Of course, this makes him facepalm, but at the same time, it's kind of reassuring, because if she's out playing ninja at midnight, it means the guards are on patrol, making it unlikely for real thieves to show up. Just then, Lady Jiang notices a group of people gathered outside. Curious, she points at them and asks what's happening. Our boy gets chills as he realizes they are performing rituals to ward off ghosts. They continue eating, and Lady Jiang comments that Su Qing's lifestyle feels like a prison. He laughs and reminds her of everything they did: shopping, watching documentaries, eating lunch, crying over anime, and then having dinner. He explains that this is called having a home and living like an otaku. But Lady Jiang still doesn't understand. So Su Qing breaks it down for her. Staying at home means having the freedom to choose what to do and where to go. He compares it to an ancient landlord who spends his days in a mansion with his family and a cat. Lady Jiang then decides to go for a walk. Su Qing asks if she plans to go out alone. She doesn't answer, which is all the confirmation he needs. He immediately goes on a rant, listing all the dangers outside and all the things she still doesn't know. In the end, he effectively shuts down her idea, telling her to stay put until she fully understands how the world works. He even points out that even if he gave her money to eat at restaurants, she still wouldn't know how to earn money on her own. Without a way to make money, she'd just be spending without thinking. He jokes that unless she plans to commit crimes or go hunting, which isn't possible here, she'll just end up digging through garbage. Hearing this, Lady Jiang quietly eats her burger, realizing that without an ID card, she can't even take a simple walk by herself. Seeing her sulk, Su Qing reaches into his pocket and pulls out 2 coins. He tells her that at least she's learned how to take the bus, so she should go and experience it by herself. This will be her first step forward. But Lady Jiang refuses, saying she hasn't learned anything. Su Qing, however, doesn't take no for an answer. He forces the coins into her hand, assuring her that she's already learned a lot in just 1 month. Still curious, she asks if ghosts really exist. He simply gestures at the people outside doing their ghost-busting rituals, saying that's all the proof she needs. He then tells her that once she starts making money, she can pay him back. But when she wonders what will happen if she never earns anything, he shrugs and says they'll figure it out. Touched by his kindness, she thanks him, calling him young warrior again. Later, Su Qing sets up a game on his computer where she can play as a character, explore, and learn how to make money in a virtual world. He suggests she try it out to see if she gets the hang of things. When she asks why she can't just do what he does and work online for money, he explains that it's complicated and she should start with the basics first. Suddenly, the doorbell rings. Su Qing immediately panics and tells her to hide in her room. But the person outside starts getting impatient, yelling at him to open the door. When Su Qing hears the voice, he gets even more nervous. He quickly guides Lady Jiang into a room and locks the door before facing his unexpected visitor. Standing in front of him is an old man with a grumpy expression. Our boy awkwardly greets him, but the old man adjusts his glasses and sternly tells him to address him as landlord. The old man looks around before getting straight to the point. He demands to know if Su Qing has found a job yet. Su Qing, still calling him landlord instead of dad, insists that he will pay the rent on time. He argues that since he can afford his rent and his current lifestyle, he doesn't see the need to get a job. But this only makes the old man angrier. Like any typical father, he starts scolding his son, calling him a failure. Before the argument gets worse, Su Qing quickly cuts him off, offering to pay the rent immediately. However, the old man's attention shifts to the computer screen, where an RPG game is running. His irritation grows even more. With a stern face, he lays down an ultimatum. If Su Qing doesn't find a job by next month, the rent is going up. No excuses. But before leaving, he called out to Su Qing. Immediately, he promised that he could explain. His father asked if he was cross-dressing, a puzzling question that made our boy frown.